Good evening, everyone, and hello. My name is Renira, and I'm speaking from Learners Point Training Academy. We are here today gathered for an amazing experience altogether, and we're going to dive into something that is the next big thing, which is blockchain. I would like to give a little bit of brief about myself before I introduce the guest for today. My name is Renira, and I have been working with Learners Point for about over a year now. I come from the training and development industry, and I have about 10 plus years' experience in the same field. Of course, my specialization is hospitality, but blockchain is something that I'm very, very intrigued by and very interested in. So here we are today. And I'm very excited to meet this person because I've read so much about you. And to introduce the guest, today we have somebody who is going to discuss with us the revolution that blockchain is. We have none other than Meike Crochet with us. Meike is one of my favorite people these days because I've been reading so much about her. And she is somebody who comes from the innovative technology community. She's the CEO of the BlockX space, entrepreneur, a specialist in blockchain, based with users of cases and business transformation. She works with analyzing the problem areas of different industries and companies, highlights how the blockchain technology and smart Ricardian contracts solve these problems massively in improving their business. She also has a team of specialists that she works with that work on blockchain solutions, project management, and support throughout the integration and the adaptation of the technology. Mikey also inspires her audience as a speaker at a lot of corporate events and runs mind blowing workshops on this incredible technology. You are a positive force in the blockchain community. What I love about you is this recognition in order to truly scale blockchain. You have addressed issues in the past where I have seen where you're talking about the development of software, issues like governance, data privacy, government regulations, and so much more. Please welcome and please put your hands together for none other than Mikey. Mikey, welcome to our show.
Hi. Thanks a lot for this introduction. Very happy to be here today.
Thank you. Mikey, could you give us a little bit more about yourself for the audience to get to know you better?
I mean, you almost said everything to be said. I mean, I'm in the blockchain space since a couple of years, and I was really amazed. I mean, what drew me into the blockchain space was actually how the technology uh, can probably make the world a better place, and the purity of this system, the transparency and honesty and immutability that this technology represents, and that I would love to see in the world. And back then, when I was getting into the blockchain space, I was actually searching for an opportunity to find a scalable business model, business idea. And when I heard about the blockchain technology alone, the one use case that you can send a penny within a second around the globe within for a fraction of a cent was mind blowing to me, because I know that many people in the world are struggling, not having access to a bank, and or yeah, not having access to the banking system, and therefore are excluded in many uh, normal what we consider as a normal life.
Yeah.
And solving a problem of more than meanwhile 1.7 billion people is a
Yeah.
huge thing.
Yes. Yes, yes, it is. Of course, it is. I'm so excited here today to talk about this topic. I've seen a lot of podcasts. I've read a lot of articles when it comes to blockchain and how it's been storming the industry. And one good thing is you're in such a unique position today, given your leadership role at the very center point of blockchain. Looking at it from a layman's perspective, how can we describe blockchain, and why is it referred to the next best thing after the internet?
So in general, you can say that blockchain is a decentralized network, And there are different mechanisms that can make sure that let's say, first of all, the data is being timestamped, that you know at this point of time the data was created, and is every data is kind of processed in a way, it's called hashed, that every data has like a fingerprint. And when somebody tries to manipulate that data, you you know it. And then through this decentralization of this network and the data, it's you can send data or value across the network in a way that no centralized third party is needed, which was beforehand. For example, when
Right.
it comes to like a banking system where you have your money on the bank, which is then kind of the custodial of the bank, and they can say if you want to make um, um, a transaction to your friend, you own €5 for a coffee, then the bank says, let me think about that. If you can actually send this €5 to your friend, but with a blockchain, you don't need to ask a centralized third party if I may do this transaction. It's peer to peer, but the transaction is then verified through some processes in the network. There are different mechanisms, but this is going too far to respond to it.
No,
So that
but it
is,
was a
yeah,
very good example. It was a very good example to what you said. And before we deep dive into the entire topic of blockchain, and in
yeah,
simple terms, if I have to ask you, why to choose blockchain over the traditional technology?
yeah. So your question before was also what is the difference to the current internet?
Yes.
So, I mean, talking about traditional technologies, there are different aspects to look at. First of all, um, how did usual or traditional storages work? Then the second thing is how did transaction work, or how were networks? How did networks look like? And then think how did how does the current internet work? So let's start maybe with storages. How to store your data? Usually, I mean, there are centralized data storages. You have some at your home, at your computer, or when you are um, using a cloud service, then someone else is storing the data for you in a centralized manner. And there's something called CRUD, CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. This what you can do with usual data. Uh, are these, let's say, these key points. But with a blockchain, when you create and write data or update the blockchain, you can still trace back the data how it was beforehand. So it's being timestamped. This hasn't been so far with usual storages, and that you can trace it back with in blocks of data, let's say,
Yeah.
um, also hasn't been. So let's say a bank was storing or doing, let's say a fund, a hedge fund. They are being asked by a government of certain transactions because they need it for a certain court case or so. Then the transaction might be back like 10 years, and now the hedge fund has huge problems because they need to find the information how it was back then.
Right.
Um, Otherwise, they are facing, for example, regulatory issues or something that they cannot act in a certain country anymore. So the hedge fund is rotating 2 weeks, 3 weeks, where the whole team tries to find this data, and it consumes so much resources. And now with the blockchain, in a matter of a few minutes, you can
Yeah.
find out how the situations were connected, when it was changed, when these and these things happened. So
Right.
this is one thing about data storages in general. Then I mentioned already how transactions happen without
Correct.
the need of a centralized third party.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else did I say? Then how the internet works. Also, I mean, with a centralized third party, it's like there are, let's say, this is a centralized network. There
Right.
are centralized parties who have the power over the network, which is also in a form with the internet. There are, let's say, servers and kind of like hubs where all the data goes through.
Mm-hmm.
And with the blockchain, we are not dependent on one single server or to do the transactions to uh, uh, where the data is being stored. If one server burns down and
Mm.
all the data is lost, don't worry. There are hundreds of different others, let's say, servers in a way, or nodes that are having your information.
Yeah.
And now on um, the internet has today several problems. There are several big players, a few very big players like Google, Facebook. They are all having power over your data. You don't know. I mean, everyone might have used
Yeah.
Facebook so far. They are storing all your data um, in a like, let's say, siloed way, and they have been hacks. They have been hacks of millions and millions of user data, and you don't know. I mean, how are they misused or used? Um, who is making money with the content that you are actually providing, the information that you are putting on the internet? It's not you. These are other parties like Facebook, like Google, who are making huge amounts of money with
Yeah.
the value, the data that you are providing. And blockchain changes the power over the data, who has access to it, and the monetization of that data. If you are providing data and someone consumes it in any way, you can say, I want to have money, and this money streams and can stream immediately from the consumer's
Mm.
wallet, non-custodial wallet, into your own wallet, which has not
Ah,
been possible so far.
that's amazing. I mean, when you talk about data, I know it's one of the most highly sold things right now and has much more value than gold, rather. But this is such an amazing thing that you said, wherein, you have that comfort of knowing that the money going from one end to another is encrypted and secure. Now, we do live in a network society. We cannot not accept that, where we see transactions across networks in a distributed system. Are we finding blockchain better at managing those transactions, like you just said? Like, it is much better than the traditional way. And I think one of the examples is something that you just gave as well. Is there anything more that you can add to this?
I mean, when you look at the blockchain technology, there are actually thousands of different blockchain technologies, and each of these technologies have different metrics,
Mm.
capabilities, let's say. There are so-called public blockchains where you
Mm.
can see the transactions that are going on within a network. And these transactions can be analyzed in a way and also can be traced back. Usually it's anonymous, so I
Mm.
don't know who is actually doing these transactions unless certain providers or governments have access to further data that has been connected to that on-chain data, data that is on the blockchain. For example, KYC, know your customer. That is that you
Yeah.
need to, for example, trade on a serious professional crypto exchange. Um, and then there are analytic tools to trace everything back. So if anyone wants to do, let's say, certain black, dark things on the network, then it's most likely kind of like easy to trace it back, where it came from, who did it, and
Yeah.
it can be there can be law enforcement done.
All right. Okay. Oh, we're very, very technical there with the law enforcement getting in. But see, this is such a special time, 2022. We've had our cracks in the armor, right? And there have been cracks with the exposed systems, exposed organizations. What have you seen over the past of these years with the exposures that you tell me that now is the time for a new approach?
I mean, I already mentioned some of the cracks with centralized parties like Facebook, or I mean, Facebook is one of the bigger cases where millions of user data were being hacked, and this could only happen because of the centralization of the data, and
Yeah.
this needs to change. Imagine you have a decentralized network, and the user data is stored encrypted on this decentralized network. It's not feasible or not even possible, at least with the current technologies, to gain such an amount of user data, to steal such an amount of user data from the blockchain by any hacker. It's
Yeah.
still possible potentially to hack in one computer of some private user, uh, but it's not likely that you can steal like millions of consumer user data as it happened before. Also, I mean, what you saw on the last few months and years around EHR data, electronic health records.
Yeah.
So people was or doctors store your patient data. Hackers can can kind of like simply steal the data, and there were many countries that were actually being blackmailed that they would release that patient data if the governments wouldn't pay something or react in a certain way doing these things. I mean, cyber wars in a form that
Yeah.
were going on, especially since the pandemic started.
Yeah. Since we're on the subject and you have touched the healthcare industry, there's something that I would like to pick up here. Governments like Estonia have used blockchain in particular to centrally manage the health records and manage them on a distributed system. And they have used this new technology to better and improve the citizens' experience. Even before the pandemic, we did feel like, as patients and as citizens, relying upon the healthcare system. The data was not available to transfer from one doctor to another. Why do you think distributed systems are so powerful in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, so I have to add that Estonia is already like researching the blockchain field for electronic health records since 2016. It's kind of like they're very ahead in
Yes.
the real life adoption of blockchain technology. It's Estonia is really one of the countries that can be idols to other countries,
Yes.
and as I already mentioned, uh, not storing electronic health records in centralized places, like for doctors, has many advantages. For first of all, you as a patient, uh, or me as a patient, I don't know all the doctors that collected the data since the last decade of me. I don't know, and every time I changed the doctor, I had to tell
Freelance.
them all the things again.
Yes, sir.
Okay, these are the conditions. These are the past things. Why is it needed anymore? Now with the blockchain, we have like one universal source of truth
Yeah.
where all the doctors could connect with. If me as a patient, as the owner of the data, give certain, let's say, access tokens to a certain doctor, and I also have the power to take that power again from this doctor if I'm not a patient anymore.
Yeah.
So, and if the doctor doesn't have access to my EHR data, then
Mm.
he can also say, "Oh, I cannot treat you as you don't give me access to your
Your data.
data." So it it uh, it relies on each other, and through the blockchain technology with the encryption mechanisms that are there, it's so much safer.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you had to say about it being much more safer. And I have also had my experiences from doctor to doctor, and they're not really having our records before. But touching upon another industry, the supply chain. Better information, better data, better decisions are just some of the statistics that I have seen of how effective blockchain is. But let's face it, people do make mistakes, and due to which the business has a problem. And when those problems happen, how do we verify transactions in a complex ecosystem?
Well, first of all, supply chain, in a usual supply chain, many stakeholders are involved.
Yes.
And so far, certain stakeholders can manipulate data. They you cannot trace it back when something was changed. And with the blockchain and IoT sensors, for example, we can trace things back very accurately. The data is being timestamped. For example, when going back to the pharma industry, we have the vaccinations or drugs or medicine in general. And there are, for example, a company from the pharma industry
Mm.
is sending medicine from Amsterdam to Africa. And on the supply chain, on the way, there is, for example, a drug mafia
Mm.
who exchanges the original medicine with fake medicine, with
Yeah.
placebos. Or second case is that the temperature is not being stable or hold according to what the medicine, the drug would need to
Yeah.
still work.
Yeah, of
So
course.
yeah, it's too high temperature or something. And so the problem is that around 43% of the medicine that arrives in Africa is not properly working, and many people are dying from because of this issue. Also, there are different countries having the same problems, where it's kind of like Russian roulette. If the medicine that you're buying is actually working. So with the blockchain technology and IoT sensors, first of all, we can with IoT sensors, for example, the temperature can be measured, and well, the temperature, let's say curves and everything are stored as data on the blockchain. So if
Mhm.
something happens with um, this you can trace it back when it if it happens, or you can also then, as a consumer, at the
Mm.
end check with your phone. You scan, for example, a code, and you can have access to the blockchain. You
Yes.
can see, you can prove it yourself if something happened, or among the stakeholders. If someone manipulated something on the way,
Mm.
then it's in the interest of the next stakeholder involved to prove something was manipulated and make the other one accountable. So the accountability is much, much higher with the blockchain, uh, and that, let's say, the stakeholders can manage it within themselves to make the other accountable for damages, let's say, or if someone, I mean, medicine is very is one thing, but food supply chain is another thing. For example, um, there are regions that are bringing out organic milk into the
Okay.
market. We're
Yes.
claiming we are producing such an amount of
Uh,
organic milk or organic honey, but it's
yeah.
not even possible that this amount of honey or milk has been produced in that way. So you can trace it back, and you can make these people accountable through the blockchain, IoT sensors, all sort of things that it's now possible, which hasn't been possible beforehand.
That was a really scary example, as well as of negligence and yes, the milk thing. Even I'd heard about this. So we've discussed a lot about all the different industries, and I want to discuss a little bit more when we talk about the barriers. I suspect, Mikey, many of our listeners as well may feel that it's counterintuitive to manage data across a distributed system from a data security standpoint than actually putting a padlock on the data. Could you explain why building for one customer cannot be as easy as building for many?
I mean, one customer, there can be solutions be built for one customer, but whatever is built for this one customer, it should be built on a blockchain that kind of like everyone or many people are using, because it might not be as let's say economic for one customer to build a full
Yeah.
network, a full um, for example, public blockchain for one user. That this would make sense, because then you would need to run I don't know how many nodes to make the network resilient to attacks and so forth. With public blockchain, this is where everybody can plug in. It's like the internet. You wouldn't
Yeah.
build your own internet,
Yeah.
but you use the internet to make your own use case, to build your own business, let's say. And that's how I see it. And still, on a public blockchain, you can still build on top of it, like a private ledger, for example. So there are many options, and um, there are different ways to actually preserve the data privacy, and where only certain stakeholders have actually access to the actual data. For most of the people, then it's only like a hash on the blockchain. That's when you search. It's like um, a very long number,
Yeah.
but it doesn't tell you something. Only when you have the access with the keys to that data, you can actually see what this data is about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me also. And we've seen a lot of reduction when it comes to the cost of transaction that's been coming down. The time to process the transaction has been coming down. And it's very comforting for people like us. But do we see the reduction of the time it takes to run transactions? And can we actually achieve some more on that scale, of that scale rather?
Um, I mean, depends on what technology we are taking a look at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I said, for example, when it comes to blockchain technology, there are thousands of blockchain technologies, and they have certain metrics. For example, the scalability. When the blockchain technology has low scalability, but it is being used a lot, then there's like the each transaction takes longer time to be processed. And there are blockchain technologies that are highly scalable, which can process a transaction very fast in a fast manner. In a,
Yeah.
and it's like this. And actually, it is would be needed that there's a low latency, like between 200 and 400 milliseconds, that unless if it's above, then there's a higher risk of, for example, certain attacks of the network. So things have to be very quick, and to make let's say there are networks like Ethereum. Ethereum is one of the famous blockchain technologies out there, but it cannot really scale. So the maximum amounts of transaction within 24 hours in Ethereum are around 1.4 million transactions around, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes several minutes to do a transaction. And also what happens is that the transaction fees are high, very high. So when the network is congested, the miners are raising the fees to do a transaction, and it's not really economic. It doesn't make an economical sense using this network. So what I see is necessary for a blockchain technology is, I mean, besides others, is this that it's highly scalable, and that the transaction fees are very low and not exclusive to any society, but inclusive, so everybody in the world can use it as the internet today.
Wow. Well, very, very interesting. This is getting even more interesting as we go ahead. Now, innovation, the mother of necessity, and that's the biggest example we can give here. But I do have something else that comes to my mind. Many people, whenever people are talking about blockchain, they think of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has been associated with some shady transactions and the underbelly of the world. What do you have to say about the association that these people have to say?
Well, when I was thinking about Bitcoin a couple of years ago, before I actually knew what blockchain Bitcoin is about, I had the same associations with the word blockchain or Bitcoin, namely something connected with human trafficking, black money, drugs, yeah, very, very shady things. Until I actually got to know, and until I got, let's say, educated by people who knew something about blockchain and digital assets in general, and then I informed myself. So unless you're not, yeah, you don't actually know something, yeah, you are going with the prejudices that are out there, but it's not the truth, and education is very much needed.
Yes. That's true. Even with the Bitcoin, it's something that you definitely need a little bit of education in, and you need to know a little bit about a lot to do actually with trading and shares and so much more. And of course, we have spoken about the different barriers that we have. I'd just like to ask you one last time again. Any other barriers that you see significant other than the ones that we've discussed? Like, is there anything that you think that might have a little bit of a concern?
Yeah, well, there are several concerns that I have. I mean, education is one big factor because these things that you mentioned, these shady things that are associated with it, also stops it to some extent in regards to the mass adoption.
Yeah.
Secondly, it also affects how governments want to regulate this space, and regulation is actually very much needed because of the lack of regulations. There are many actors in the space that are doing toxic things, which is, again, doesn't help the real
Yeah.
life adoption of the technology. So education, regulation is very much needed, and the law enforcement that toxic actors are being stopped, and a frame is being created where the actors in that blockchain space are are acting in a ethical, humanistic way, a long-term game, not a short-term game. So I'm here for the long-term game, and I really want to bring the values and act according to the values that blockchain stands for, namely the purity, honesty, immutability, and transparency. This openness that I would like to see in the world, and make processes much more effective, efficient, and secure for
Yeah.
the public and private sector.
Absolutely, absolutely. We see some of this with extreme interest about the world for digital fiat currencies. And if you really look behind the current to understand why nations are so interested in this, there's a certain amount of control element that they're looking at. And they're worried that there are so many transactions that are occurring on the system that as a government as well, they don't really see it. But as I can tell you, as from a tax perspective, if you don't know what it is, you can't tax it. So there's certainly a little bit of loss, tax revenue there. Do you think that that's one of the motivating factors behind digital fiat currency push? Like, is this an opportunity for control?
Well, I think all sorts of technologies, you can use them in a good way and in a bad way.
Yeah.
So this is the same with blockchain technology. On the one side, you can make processes much more effective, efficient, and secure. On the other side, surely it could be used as a very, let's say, black mirror scenario, where it's the biggest surveillance system in the world,
Yeah.
where also like social, how can you say it, rating systems can be introduced. We
Hmm.
saw some similar things in China, where people are excluded from certain things when they act. I mean, maybe you are against a certain party, you are a journalist, you went over the street with red lights, like a social rating system, and let's say this is on a blockchain, and stays on a blockchain, and you're excluded from daily life situations, like going on a train, taking the bus, buying gasoline at the station.
Yeah.
So these are the like minor things, and that's why I also say regulation is very much needed. That these things can never happen, at least not in our part of the world. What China does, we don't have the power over it. But I think, for example, in the European Union, I think there's more humanistic, ethical behavior in this regard. Um, but I mean, every nation has to look for themselves and what's best for them
Mm.
at the end. But yes, it could be used as a surveillance system. But in regards to your mentioned taxes, actually, blockchain in combination with further technologies like the so-called smart contracts and recurring contracts. You know, one big thing here in Germany is taxes. I mean, it's so complicated. It's such a mess. I would love to burn it down and create it completely anew. And I think with artificial intelligence, big data, and as I said, blockchain, smart recording contracts, we can actually take the burden of doing all these income tax processes and stuff from our shoulders. Namely, when we use our, let's say, non-custodial wallet, we go in the shop and buy something for our company. So it's an expense for our income, which is reducing the income tax. And these processes would then automatically being calculated and stored on a blockchain, and also the VAT that we are paying at the shop is immediately being transferred through the tax department. So also the shop owner doesn't need to take care anymore about calculating the VAT, the value added tax. It's immediately done, and this
Yeah.
is actually in the interest of or should be in the interest of each government introducing the blockchain technology, that first of all they receive immediately these taxes, and secondly, uh, no party can actually, let's say, surround this tax system.
I really appreciate you talking about all these obstacles with us and, being plain and open about this thing. It's very important that we discuss these barriers and have a transparent discussion because this is what I love about the community is the innovation to find new things and around it. And we have said somewhere down the line that, a few times we think that this is the watershed moment in the entire human history to adopt to these new distributed systems. One last time, I'm going to ask you this question. I swear. Why do you still think that this is the moment, the blockchain moment?
Well, I think we saw too many cases where the traditional systems failed, and there is more and more data coming up. And how do we deal with this data? How can we make sure that the data is not being manipulated? Uh, we want to create a system of truth, of honesty, where all parts are being incentivized to, stay honest. When I, as a company, put out data, I claim, let's say, I'm acting in a green way, I'm acting sustainable, then
Yeah.
associated data is put on a blockchain, I'm very much more incentivized to stick to the things that I claimed than it's being like loosely said, and nobody can prove it afterwards when it was said. Now there's an incentive to stick to what I said. There's less greenwashing possibilities when these things are being used, are being used. In the
Yes.
traditional way, and uh, it's time. The time is now to get into the space. I have to add that there's no blockchain technology that could currently scale for the whole world,
Yeah.
uh, but we have the technologies to scale for certain things. For example, we could let run a full social media on the blockchain
Hmm.
where everyone has actually the users have the power over the data, where the user will profit from the data that they are creating, from the content that they are creating, and and create, let's say, a self-serving system.
Hmm.
We um, we as users will profit immediately from the usage of blockchain technology, and it should be in our interest to push it forward to adapt. At the moment, still the traditional platforms, for example, on the internet, are leading, are
Yeah.
ruling the scene. But it's like the beginning of the internet. It's not like this overnight that everyone is on the internet. It took maybe uh, 80 to 10 years that maybe now still people are struggling going on the internet sending an email, but the main adoption took place in the beginning of 2000s, and
Yeah.
I think it's the time now for the blockchain technology.
Perfect. Very, very well answered. And I like what the examples that you gave. Do you think that the pandemic has been an accelerant because of the difficulties that many governments have had? Like, could be, for example, they didn't have the pipes in place to push our stimulus, or as we're seeing now, massive supply chain problems in pushing out vaccinations. Do you think that the pandemic did slow it down, or it has rather actually made it speed up?
Uh, well, so and so. So there were
50-50.
parts. where the adoption was pushed forward, and where, for example, in the COVID management, in the supply chain, they tried to push it forward that when something happened in a way where viruses or something were involved, that it could be traced back. And so in the supply chain, there were approaches, okay, or how to digitalize contracts, how to automate the contracts or agreements that they used to do with like checks on a paper, and were now being digitalized. So this was actually a huge push in the field of digitalization and adoption of blockchain technology. Uh, I mean, you said the stimulus, for example, stimulus check in the USA. They some friends are Americans here in Germany, and they received a letter with the check in the post. Imagine anyone could have
Send
stolen
that.
it at the end.
Yeah.
And let's say with the blockchain technology, everyone could have like a non-custodial wallet, which is connected with digital identity, and the U.S. government could have easily do a transaction to each of the non-custodial wallets of the citizens, American
Mm.
citizen, in a very easy way, in a second, for $1 instead of millions to pay for post stamps and so forth. So it wasn't there yet, but maybe there are more incentivized now to get into the space. That's what I hope, at least.
Yeah, well, let's just hope for that. Strong signals. It's strong signals from the government even, and these signals are like outdated to very very early days of the new administration. We see it too. You look around the different government agencies, the teams that are innovating with this technology, and how that will help the society will be so incredible to watch. Blockchain may be a really big deal in the short term. The price of Bitcoin has reached at a very, very fluctuating high. How much of the growth from in this valuation of Bitcoin do you think may be attributable to the promise of blockchain as the underlying technology?
So first of all, I don't think like the price of Bitcoin, the BTC, is anyhow related to the real life adoption of the technology,
Hmm.
or of Bitcoin itself.
Hmm.
The crypto market is an own world where it's much about speculation, and rarely about the real actual adoption of the technology. So what we saw in the stock market and crypto market since March 2020, there was a huge um,
Dip.
downfall, dip, yes, a valley. and
Yes, it was.
it then spiked to insane prices where the market was simply insane, and nothing was related to actual uh, usage or successes of certain companies or something. It was like the craziness in the market. And so um, I would actually focus on the actual real life adoption of blockchain technology and
Mhm.
not the prices. If you are a trader, or if you want to learn how to trade, I think the crypto market offers so much opportunities. Then, if you know how to trade, um, and you can make a lot of money with the crypto market itself. Um, but I mean, for me, what I think is most incentivizing to me is actually bringing services and applications to the world that really help the world and societies to be much safer, efficient, and
Correct.
secure.
Yeah. There's so much I'm learning. I actually do feel that I'm sitting in a training class for blockchain myself. And getting on to this point wherein there are vulnerable people and societies where blockchain is so exciting to see. Like, for example, the alignment to the Sustainable Development Goals and how this technology adopted as a true general purpose. How do you think blockchain technology could actually help save the planet and improve communities?
Yeah, I already mentioned some of the aspects how
Yes.
blockchain technology can save the planet in a way. Um, for example, the greenwashing. So
Mm,
greenwashing is when people, when companies are making their, let's say, sustainable um, data in a way or showing, okay, we are green, but actually they're not green. Um, uh, and uh, and with the blockchain technology and sticking to the accountability of the data that are pushed out and as I said, for example, the supply chain, I know I can trace it back. And if, for example, there are regions, again, an example for China, I don't have anything against China, but there are several cases that I know. For example, how cotton is produced,
mm,
where people are being forced to go on the fields. It's um, like they're forced. And if you're not going on the field and get the cotton from the field, then we put you in the prison. So me as a consumer, I don't
yeah,
want to support such behavior.
absolutely.
And with if the all these big brands would actually do their supply chain on the blockchain, then they couldn't use such a cotton. Then they would again force the producer of the cotton not to do to show such behaviors.
Mm,
The people would be treated would be in a much better conditions, and I think people that are happy
yeah,
they live in a much more economical way,
yes,
a much more ecological way. If I'm happy, I don't need to maybe, or if I'm happy and have like basic resources,
yes,
I don't need to cut down all the trees. I don't need to uh, uh, destroy the planet in a way, but I try to preserve, conserve the things that I have, treat them in a very good way. I want
hmm,
to see the world in a good shape in every way. I want to see clean rivers. I want to see all these things. I want to have clean air. Um, with less carbon emissions, and I want to reward the companies, the people that are acting accordingly.
yeah,
And uh, I think with the blockchain we can actually uh, yeah create such a system also where people everyone around the world is producing data, is
yes,
creating content, and I see that every one of us could create like a basic income through the data, the content that we are daily providing, and it's being consumed in our own network, like a self-serving economy or ecosystem,
hmm,
uh, where everyone receive everything that he needs or she needs. And as I said, a, a, a person that is happy will live much more ecological or
yeah.
economical, and will support uh, that the world is being
Yeah,
saved.
yeah, yeah. I'm into that. Well, you very well said. And it's a win win actually for the organizations as well as individual governments. And I totally agree with you, Mikey. We are coming to the end of our time today. And we will have to end this. But of course, I'm going to ask you a few, not rapid fire rather, but a few quick questions before I let you go. And if that's okay with you, it's just something out of the blog. But then I am just very, just to go on the lighter side, just something fun rather. If I could ask you, what are the books that you have on your nightstand? Well, very interesting, I know, but
Oh, well, there are. I have actually a bookshelf next to my bed,
uh,
and on the bookshelf there are actually many spiritual books.
mm,
Nothing around blockchain. So I don't know the English titles. I only know the German titles. But there's
oh wow,
a book of the Dalai Lama. There's a book
oh,
of Paulo
Paulo Coelho,
Coelho.
Coelho,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Hermann Hesse. Yeah, many different books. But when I read about blockchain technology, I mean, it's usually I do this online. I have these things on my computer. There are many different research studies that are very interesting to read. Um, I have access to like a digital library
Hmm.
where I have a huge amount of books all around blockchain technology. Or I also do some research online, trying to find the knowledge that I need. And yeah, so internet is actually a good access to learn uh, around
Very
blockchain.
interesting collection besides the blockchain with Paulo Coelho going down there. I think he's part of everyone's bookshelf, I think. But okay, I just want to know, Mikey, if you know, while closing back at the entire whole scale of blockchain and so much that we've understood about blockchain, like for a layperson's like point of view, we've heard so much, and what do you see as a greatest opportunity to build back stronger when we finally emerge from this pandemic, if we ever emerge from this?
Um, I mean, I think we have to live with some
Yeah,
sort of
kind
pandemic, I guess. I mean, viruses and bacteria are everywhere. We cannot escape from them. Uh, but I mean, I think one of the things that are necessary for, let's say, the new world
of. Hmm.
is that we create the basis for everyone, that even full lockdowns are happening, that we can still live.
Yeah,
And I think the way that we can still live happens online
yeah.
in a digital world,
Hmm.
and also that we still have a social life, even there's a
Hmm.
lockdown. It also will come through the so-called metaverse. We didn't talk about that today, but there's another
Oh,
podcast. Uh, and so doing everything that no one in the world will struggle during lockdowns. It has to be created in a way that there is a basis for everyone in need, and there's still like a social life, but then digitally.
yeah. That's actually very well said and very well put. I would not want to let you go without telling us a little bit about your company, BlockX Space. Just tell us about your company a little bit, Mikey.
Yeah, well, so Blockspace, we are bringing real life applications and yeah, services based on blockchain to the public and private sector. We make organizations, companies much more effective, efficient, and secure through the usage of blockchain technology and related technologies like smart contracts, recording contracts. We have access to all sorts of innovations that are out there, and we provide agnostic consultancy, then development and implementation around yeah, blockchain.
Blockchain.
So reach
Yeah.
out, touch base. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not
Yes.
connected yet. Follow me, and I always
Follow
yeah,
Mikey.
yeah, yeah.
She does a lot of events and a lot of workshops. You can definitely follow her. There's so much more to shed light on when it comes to blockchain. It's quite vast. And my next question is very, very interesting because I know you come from a transition of a music industry to blockchain. And how much of knowledge would be needed for a layperson to look at blockchain as a career? And do you think Learner's Point and our blockchain courses are apt enough for somebody to start off?
I mean, your blockchain classes are definitely one of the things I would take a look at if I were a starter, and learning about. Imagine it's the beginning of the 2000s. The
Yeah.
internet started, and everybody needed to know, how can I write an email? A very basic thing, what we think today. But back
Yes.
then, this was like, how does it work? How do I set up an email address? How can I then write an email? How does all these things? How do I log into a website? How do I open up a website? All these basic things that we think today is like, it's why did I have to learn about that? I mean, uh, back then it was not um, known how it works for the masses. And this is the same thing with blockchain technology. Now that when you learn these basic things, you can already make a business out of it. How to set up a crypto wallet, what crypto wallets are out there, what do I need to do when I want to do a transaction.
Mhm.
So very, very easy things where I know many people are making a lot of money with it. So just begin. Now is the time to go into the space, and there are many, many career opportunities open up for you.
It's very, very interesting to know how much or how many different career options are we going to have when it comes to blockchain. And it's so wide when it comes to the industry that blockchain is. It's not like, focused on one particular thing. I think we had one question from one of the audience. If the technical team could just, send it out to me here, I could read it to Mikey. All right. Okay, I have it. Any movies you did recommend on blockchain? Probably a fun way to learn more. Very interesting. Kashif. It's by somebody named Kashif. Kashif
Hello,
Akhtar.
Kashif. Any movies?
Mm.
I actually are there. I know some documentaries about Bitcoin from a German French broadcaster, but this wouldn't help you. So I immediately cannot name anything. I don't know. So I'm more like yeah, in the reading
Mm.
in the reading field, or there are different academies and so forth. So yeah, it's not. I mean, if you like to watch movies instead of reading, I just not as much as opportunities than like in reading.
Blockchain is more technical compared to the visual, but then I think it's a homework for all of us. Now we will go I will definitely go back and check if there are any movies that can help us with blockchain. My god, Mikey, thank you so much for doing this with us. I'm so happy and I go back so satisfied because I did have something like this on my list, and I wanted to know blockchain, but not just sit on YouTube and just listen to somebody who wasn't interactive and just a recorded session. I wanted it to be live, and here I am sitting with you and getting as much knowledge as we can from you on blockchain. And I personally want to thank you for this, and I hope to have many more conversations on blockchain, and have a collaboration on this with you guys soon. And once again, thank you, Mikey. Thank you so much for taking out time and introducing us, and for your contribution rather, for this wonderful world of blockchain and how important it is. So thank you so much. And I'm going to close today. And thank you, people, for everyone who've joined us today. Thank you for your time. And I hope that you were able to take back as much as I did. And hopefully, each one gets into this blockchain field and, learns how to get yourself, your life, and everything else much more secured. And yeah, that's how we can go forward, I believe. All right, then I am going to close. Mikey, you have anything to say before I end the show today?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm honored and happy to be here. I always love to speak about blockchain and everything around it. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and see you
We
another
did.
time.
I had a wonderful time, and I hope everybody else did. Thank you so much, everyone, and stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you again.